is comparable. And I know that we're part of this problem for sure. So that's a tough thing to message. But have you thought about that?
You're not part of the problem. And I've heard you talk. I spend too much time on DF, but I've heard you talk about how you really shouldn't be looking at internal rendering resolution and drawing too much in the way of conclusions from that. You really need to be looking at image quality. And I was trying to communicate exactly the same message today, is we need to change the way we're talking about resolution.
Before we get into the main topic of the day, we need to debunk some obvious claims that is going around YouTube and the web lately. And in my opinion, these claims and beliefs are very dangerous for a few reasons. For one, it's making people do poor purchasing decisions, and they always realize few years later how bad of a decision they made due to people in articles saying and writing stuff just for the clicks. Are exclusives ending for Sony? It's not ending, I promise you. They've been saying this since the PS3 days. I gave up when Uncharted 4 dropped, bought the damn PS4, and never looked back. And here we are, 10 years later with the same narrative. It doesn't really affect me anymore, nor does it tie into me blindly defending Sony, but let's be real, it's just not true. I can't help but laugh at these executives who aren't even part of Sony anymore, talking trash, and people just love to quote them when it fits their narrative. But it's all BS. I put in crazy amounts of research for my videos. If I knew PlayStation was going to turn into Xbox in the next 2 years, I'd tell everyone, don't buy a PS5, everything's going multi-platform. Do you remember when people said during the PS4 era that Sony's single-player exclusives were doomed because multiplayer and live service games are the future? Fast forward, and God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Spider-Man became massive global hits. Yet, here we are again, with people claiming the same thing about the PS5. It's like they haven't learned anything from the last generation. What people don't realize is how massive this industry is and how many moving parts are involved. We're talking billions of dollars being thrown around. Studios have deals with Sony, Nintendo, and others. There are negotiations happening behind closed doors constantly. Hundreds of millions are invested in next-gen consoles, companion devices like the PS5 Portable, and future innovations. Think about it. Do you really believe Sony, a company with its hands in all of these investments, is going to throw it all away to become Xbox? That's not just illogical, it's ignorant. This is also why I can't watch a single gaming video on YouTube about tech or the business side of things. Every video I watch drives me insane within 2 minutes because of how wrong they are. And these videos are racking up millions of views. Then I see people coming to this channel repeating that same stuff or quoting things they think are facts. I don't blame them, and I don't blame you either. If YouTube or out-of-touch executives are your main sources of information, this is what you're working with. But me? When the CEO of Sony says something, or an executive, or even an ex-CEO, I start digging. Remember that ex-CEO of Sony, what's his name, who said, exclusives are dying? Everyone jumped on that. See what the ex-Sony boss said. I didn't post that day. Instead, I looked into his resume. You want the short version? China, Tencent. Tencent wants Kadokawa. And guess what? Sony is close to wrapping up their own Kadokawa buyout. Tencent pays certain execs to make controversial statements. It's all part of a strategy. These aren't conspiracy theories. This is how business works at that level. A single comment from an ex-CEO gets twisted, spreads like wildfire, and suddenly becomes fact in gaming forums. But people don't know that. They see an article, jump on it, and sprinkle in some drama for good measure. Here's the problem. The algorithm loves drama, so the loudest, most controversial voices get amplified. A single misinformed YouTuber makes a bold claim, gets millions of views, and suddenly it's common knowledge. Meanwhile, the real information, the kind that requires research and context, gets buried because it's not clickbaity enough. That's not just frustrating, it's dangerous for the conversation around gaming. I don't follow the noise, I follow the money. When you do that, the patterns become obvious. These narratives about PlayStation crumbling or exclusives disappearing aren't just false, they're distractions. So if you want to really know what's happening in gaming, stop listening to regurgitated sound bites and start asking the right questions. Who benefits from this narrative? Who's investing where? And what's actually being built? That's how you separate truth from noise. Claim 2. Nobody cares about PS3 exclusives, backward compatibility. We want new games. You know, man, I see your point. But can you try to see it from other people's perspectives? There are gamers who've been playing for 30 years. We're living in a complicated era where we're losing ownership of the things we love, our games, movies, even books. And why? Because we messed up and bought digital. Now we're paying the price. Think about it. Maybe God of War 2 was the game that made someone fall in love with gaming. Over time, these old consoles wear out. They don't last forever. Eventually, you reach a point where repairs aren't an option. Why take that away from someone? There are people who love new games, and there are people who cherish old ones. When you say, who cares cares about old games? You're not just dismissing nostalgia, you're dismissing the value of preserving gaming history. And honestly, in 10 years, you might want to revisit a PS4 era game you bought. What if Sony tells you, not possible, unless you pay for a premium subscription to stream an inferior version of it? And even then, if you stop paying, your game is gone. Do you think that's fair? Do you understand the value of physical media? My God of War, Ragnarok Physical Edition could be worth $1,000 one day because it's tangible. Something I own. Digital doesn't offer that. Think about a classic like Shadow of the Colossus. For me, it wasn't just a game, it was a piece of art, sparking conversations about minimalism and emotional storytelling. Or Metal Gear Solid, which completely changed how narrative-driven gameplay could be done. These aren't just games to me, they're milestones, moments worth protecting and celebrating. I care deeply about ownership too. It's not just about buying a game to play it now. It's about knowing I can revisit it years later, share it with a friend, or even pass it down like a cherished book. When I see physical media, I don't just see a disc or cartridge. I see a piece of history. The fact that a copy of Final Fantasy VII on PS1 can still be played decades later means something to me. That's value beyond just dollars. I also think about the future. I'm not just focused on what's happening now, but on how today's choices, whether by companies, gamers, or even the media, will shape the industry 10 or 20 years from now. I imagine someone in 2035 wanting to experience a PS4-era gem like Horizon Zero Dawn, only to find out they can't because of corporate policies or outdated systems. That's the kind of future I'm fighting to prevent. And it's not just about nostalgia. For me, it's about fairness. Gamers deserve to keep what they've paid for, to have the freedom to play the games they love without being forced into systems that prioritize corporate profits over player trust. That's why I dig deep, research, and challenge the misinformation out there, not to argue for the sake of it, but to make sure people understand what's really at stake.
So, we're not making PCs. We're making a few very specific things, right? How many types of PCs are there? I mean, you can't even answer that question because you can combine the components in any way you want to.
Yeah.
So, the Pro consoles are very tightly targeted. You're seeing around GPU. But when a new generation starts, then it gets opened up to what are we doing with the CPU? What are we doing with the amount of memory? What are we doing with haptics? It's a whole new...
Mark Cerny, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who doesn't just sell PlayStation tech, he breathes it. He's not here to convince you to buy anything. He's here to talk about it, to share his joy for the craft of gaming hardware, and to humble all of us in the process. When Cerny speaks, you don't hear a salesperson. You hear authenticity. You feel the humility. And let's be honest, the way he delivers his deep dives makes you want to drop every dime you have on PlayStation gear, even if your bank account is screaming at you not to. While the internet bickers over whether the PS5 can handle 4K at 60 FPS, or if it's secretly a 1080p 30 FPS machine, Cerny strolls in with his calm, measured tone and utterly obliterates those claims, not with hostility, but with pure, undeniable facts. He's like, here's the tech, here's how it works. You can decide what to do with that information. And somehow, he makes you feel like a complete fool for doubting anything, but in the kindest, most loving way possible.
Imagine 3 games that are rendering at various resolutions. A reductionist view on this is that the 1440p game engine is the best, and that the 1080p game is clearly flawed. But after a super resolution pass, these are all ending up at 4K resolution for display. The conversation really needs to be about what's important: image quality. When game creators improve their lighting or materials, or add ray tracing, then rendering each pixel can get more expensive, and the resolution will drop. They move up on this chart. And that's perfectly fine, as long as the upscaling technology is ensuring that the result is a crisp, beautiful image and not a blurry one.
Mark Cerny really stole the show with his latest PS5 Pro presentation, didn't he? Here's what went down. He kicked things off focusing on the nitty-gritty of the GPU in the PlayStation 5 Pro and why it's a big deal. It's been quite a journey since the PlayStation 5 first came out, over 7 years. So you can bet the tech has come a long way and now needs more juice to keep up with the latest games. During his talk, Cerny introduced what he called the Big 3 upgrades for the PS5 Pro: a beefier GPU, better ray tracing capabilities, and smarter upscaling of games through AI and something called PlayStation Super Spectral Resolution, PSSR. First up, the new GPU. It's a beast with a unique AMD architecture named RDNA2.X, a kind of hybrid of RDNA2 and the upcoming RDNA3 tech. This GPU is no joke. It has 66% more workgroup processors, WGP, than the current PS5. But why not just jump to RDNA3? Well, Sony didn't want to complicate things with different game versions for the base and Pro models. Kind of like how Microsoft Microsoft handles the Xbox Series S and X. Cerny also cleared up some rumors about the PS5 Pro's power, dismissing the mythical 335 teraflop figure that was floating around. He explained that while the GPU does boast a big leap in flops, it doesn't exactly mean double the performance, something he humorously dubbed flopflation. Instead, the real win is a solid 45% boost in performance. Imagine, a frame that took 16 milliseconds to render on the old PS5 can now be done in just 11. The last big topic was machine learning. The PS5 Pro uses AI to let games render fewer pixels and then smartly fills in the gaps. This means smoother visuals without sacrificing performance. Cerny hinted at future improvements here, especially in how the system handles memory, which could lead to even better performance down the road. To wrap it up, Cerny teased a new partnership with AMD called codename Amethyst, aimed at pushing machine learning even further. This isn't just some exclusive Sony magic, it's a big push to bring advanced machine learning to a variety of devices. Pretty exciting, right? It's still early days, but the potential for game-changing graphics and smoother gameplay is definitely on the horizon.
And we need to do that math in something like a millisecond. Consequently, ML hardware needs very high performance, typically hundreds of trillions of operations per second. Note that we don't call those teraflops because they're integer operations. Instead, we say TOPS. The deciding factor was the order of graphics processing within a frame. With this approach, most rendering in a frame is done at low resolution, maybe 1080p. Then machine learning is used to upscale to 4K, and there's no more rendering that can happen until that upscale finishes. So we need to process that neural network as quickly as possible, which is to say, we need...
While much of the video focused on the impressive advancements of the Pro, it was a segment toward the end that truly stole the spotlight. In his signature calm and measured tone, Cerny revealed a new multi-year collaboration between PlayStation and AMD, codenamed Project Amethyst. This initiative hints at the foundational technologies for the PS6, which, unsurprisingly, will once again feature AMD hardware. The project revolves around two key goals, both centered on leveraging machine learning to revolutionize graphics and gameplay. The first goal is a more ideal architecture for machine learning, something capable of generalized processing of neural networks, Cerny explained. In simpler terms, they're working on creating hardware that can handle advanced AI processes more efficiently. This means developers could have greater access to machine learning tools, enabling smarter NPCs, adaptive gameplay systems, and, potentially, entirely new ways of designing games. But it's the second goal that will likely get tech enthusiasts buzzing: the creation of high-quality convolutional neural networks, CNNs, specifically for game graphics. According to Cerny, these networks could be a game changer, enhancing the richness of visuals and enabling more extensive use of demanding technologies like ray tracing and path tracing. Essentially, this could bring unprecedented levels of detail, lighting, and realism to future PlayStation titles. While this announcement doesn't come as a complete surprise, various industry leaders, including Sony, have been touting the benefits of AI in gaming development. It's exciting to see how integral machine learning might become in the PS6's design. The partnership with AMD seems set to push the boundaries of what's possible in both graphics and gameplay, further cementing PlayStation's commitment to innovation. Cerny's discussion of Project Amethyst not only highlights PlayStation's forward-thinking approach, but also underscores how these advancements could shape gaming for years to come. And while details remain sparse, it's clear the groundwork for the PS6 is being laid with ambitious goals in mind. For those curious about the technical nuances, you can hear Cerny dive into the details around the 35-minute mark in his presentation. As we inch closer to the inevitable announcement of the PS6, one thing's for sure: PlayStation is gearing up for a next-gen leap that could redefine the gaming experience.
Why wasn't the CPU upgraded, and why was that not such a big focus there?
It's really just a question of where you put your resources. And I wasn't seeing, and I didn't think I would see, that many titles that couldn't run at 60. That's kind of my litmus test. Yeah. I'm not asking, do all the games run at 120 at this point in time? I'm asking, do all the games run at 60? And you can count the AAA exceptions on one hand, I think, for games that didn't eventually run at 60. And so it seemed if we threw pretty much all of our resources into the graphics, that would be the best approach.
If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.